Neither of these men, no doubt, need an introduction. When we chatted a few weeks ago, Ron and Jeff just both have such a deep passion for speaking to the heart of financial advisors, and no doubt each of them have a vast experience, both operating in the industry, speaking to other financial advisors. They've written books. So the wisdom and depth of both of these men, specific to the Bible and how it corresponds to our money and our hearts, is really just supreme. So I'm thrilled they're here with us today, and I'll read a quick bio just in case you don't know who they are. So we'll start with Ron. Ron is widely considered to be the father of Christian financial planning. He's the founder and co-founder of Ronald Blue Trust, National Christian Foundation, Kingdom Advisors, Ron Blue Institute of Financial Planning. The list goes on. The man's a legend, let's be honest. He's also the author of more than 20 books and has served on the board of numerous organizations. He and his wife, Judy, have been married for 53 years. That's probably his greatest accomplishment, let's be honest. And they have 5 children and 13 grandchildren and live in Atlanta. So, Ron, thanks for joining us today. And again, we also have Mr. Jeff Thomas. Jeff was named to Morgan Stanley's Chairman's Club, i.e. the top 2% of advisors, in 2008. From 2009 to 2013, Barron's Magazine recognized him as one of Texas's top financial advisors. After 25 years of working in some of the biggest names on Wall Street, Jeff founded Archetype Wealth Partners, a pure fiduciary platform designed to help clients thrive across generations by connecting their money with their purpose. Jeff is passionate about fueling advisors to experience greater impact and is recently the author of Trading Up, Moving from Success to Significance on Wall Street. Jeff and Ron, thank you so much for joining us today. And just so everyone kind of understands the format here, I've got some questions that we put together that I'm going to ask them. And then here in a little bit, I'll open up to Q&A from the group as a whole. So my first question, and Ron and Jeff, this is for both of you guys, is just addressing the elephant in the room, which is COVID-19. It's had a massive effect, not just on our world, but also the economy. So, initial thoughts that we'd love to hear from you guys is kind of what's your take on what's happening in the world, and how do you think the market might respond? So why don't we start, Ron, with your thoughts?
Well, actually, I've been married 55 years.
Apologies.
And that is my greatest accomplishment, and it testifies to the grace of my wife, for sure. I'm 78, and so I've had the privilege now of living through the 40s all the way up into this century. And the only thing that is certain, I think, is uncertainty. I've had the chance to look back over the crises that I've been involved, that have happened during my lifetime, and this one is bad, but there's been worse. Okay, I never thought we would survive through the double-digit inflation of the 80s, when interest rates were 14% or so on homes. I just heard of a quote on a 15-year mortgage now for a home at 2 3/8%. Never thought I would ever see that happen. So my primary thought is twofold. Number one is that crises are always caused by an event that's legitimate. When something happens, it may have been greed that caused it to happen, such as the housing market, internet bubble, whatever, but there is an event that is real. Secondly, people all of a sudden realize they're not in control, and what they experience is fear. And now you've got a choice. Fear is not a sin in itself. What is a sin in itself is reacting to that fear as if God didn't exist. And Rick has already made reference to that. So, and I don't want to over spiritualize, but yet it's a spiritual issue. And if I've got an eternal perspective, then this is all temporary. This is a part of the training process, and it will happen again. So it's a very real event. Every case that I've been through of this, they do recover over time. But what all of us have to deal with is fear, because we don't know how it's going to turn out. We have conjecture on that, but we don't know. So um, I'll stop there and let Jeff weigh in on that.
Well, I think that fear versus faith is right on the money. And I know you've written really a book about this kind of thing. And I've heard, Ron, you speak about this and take us through the timeline of the various events that you've seen in your professional career. And so you got a couple decade lead on me. So I won't add too much to that other than just that fear versus faith. And when you were talking, the first thing that came to my mind was, Joshua 1:9, right? Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. And I just love, I'm reading through the Bible on a chronological basis this year. And so I'm obviously still early in the year in the Old Testament a lot, right? And God is constantly boosting his people to have faith and fight against fear. I heard somebody say there's 365 verses on fear in the Bible, one for each day. So he knows this is a big issue. So I think just acknowledging that we have it, and I think together as advisors, acknowledging that we can be fearful sometimes and recognizing that human emotion and then casting it on God is just a great way to go. I was talking to a family therapist about a family he's working with, one of our client families, and he was talking about he was helping them focus on external things, not internal things. So when he was talking about external things, trying to innovate, look past the crisis. What kind of opportunities are there? How can we bless others? Getting kind of out of their own, he called it, not just looking at the squid on their face and trying to rip the squid off, but thinking about the future and blessing others and looking past it and looking at it as innovation and opportunity, as opposed to self-focused. That's when fear gets you. We know we're in a spiritual war. I think the evil one loves that, when we're self-focused and fearful. That's what he wants us to be, not full of faith and looking through it. And so I love this opportunity. Cale, thanks for putting this thing on and for the whole leadership group, because I just think it's an opportunity to bolster each other for that fight. We can be a little weak together here, but build each other up for that fight.
No doubt. Thank you.
Jeff,
go ahead.
I want to respond to that if I can, Cale, because just as you're talking, I'm thinking, here we are, a group of advisors from all over the area, Houston and Atlanta. But what an opportunity we have to encourage one another. And that's the body of Christ, and that's what the body is all about. None of us are really any smarter than anybody else, and none of us know the future. But here we are encouraging one another. What a phenomenal privilege that is. And I think I really just want to encourage you in what you're doing down there and building this, because this is one of the incredible outcomes of joining together. Bill Bright, I had the privilege of being on the board of Campus Crusade for a long time. And Bill would always say in a situation like this, wow, what an opportunity to trust God.
Exactly.
And I just can never, ever get over that is wow. When I begin to think, wow, what an opportunity to trust God. So,
yeah, what a great quote. Thank you for sharing that, Ron. And it's so true. I mean, when you have community, that's when you can, we're designed for community. So thank you both for giving your perspective on that. And maybe, Ron, I guess you both kind of alluded to it. Y'all, both of you guys have seen a few of these black swan events in your careers. So what's maybe one mistake you've made you would encourage others to avoid during a time like this, whether that's, personally, professionally, interactions with clients or otherwise, and then maybe what's one guiding principle that's helped you keep maybe a firm hand on the rudder in the midst of something like this? Jeff, since Ron just answered, why don't we start with you first?
Yeah, I know it's funny when you think about, advice to clients. Uh, One of my problems for a long time is I was better at dispensing advice to them than I was taking my own advice. And so when I think about advice to clients or mistakes I've made, it's really all one thing. And I think it's just an extension of what we were talking about. When I am fearful, I tend to make poor decisions, even financial decisions, right? We talk about in our office a lot overconfidence, right? I was just looking at my email before we started this call, and I bet everybody's got emails like this. Somebody saying, some people want to cash out. They think it's going to be worse than what appears to be a couple of quarter event, and other people want to buy in. And there's sort of overconfidence on both sides. And one of the things, just from an investment standpoint, but I think it is spiritual, all these decisions, as Ron always says, are spiritual decisions, is to just stay calm, stay rooted in the faith, not get overconfident that I have the right answer, but think of myself as a steward, not an owner. For a long time, I thought I was in charge, and I would ask God to bless my plans. And that generally didn't go very well. And so when I turned it over to him, I actually became a lot better, even at things like investing, because I was less emotional about it. And so rooting myself in faith has actually helped me be a better investor. I don't make as many trades. I always say, we tell clients that trading, hey, we'll set up a trading account for you, but I always tell them it's like a bar of soap. The more you use it, the smaller it gets. Okay. And so that was always true for me. So what we try to do is, influence these people as best we can, meet them where they are faith-wise, and try to be a blessing to them. And then we have a financial plan that they can measure themselves against the financial plan, not against anybody else, not against the S&P 500. Very few of them are 100% stocks in U.S. And then we have an investment plan that is based on evidence, not opinion. So we're not out there kind of, how many quarters do you think this will last? We just go with the data, and nothing's perfect. But I think those three things, thinking of us as a steward, not an owner, makes you relax and make less emotional decisions. Having a written plan of a financial plan gives you something to measure against that's tangible, also calming. And then the last thing is have an investment plan that's repeatable and it's not emotional, and sticking to it. So kind of practical, but I know those are mistakes. I've made mistakes not having a written plan. I've made a mistake relying on my own wisdom, and I've made a mistake being too emotional about investments, and we're trying to take that out.
Yeah, that's a good word. I remember, getting to meet David Green, who's the CEO of Hobby Lobby, and spend some time with him. And he made this comment that stuck with me on the steward, not owner, vein of things. Is when he always heard that, right? We've always heard that, but when it really sunk into him was when he was trying to struggle with, what does he do with this big $1 billion business of Hobby Lobby with his kids, et cetera. And when God revealed to him, not just kind of intellectually, but in his heart, what it meant to be a steward, not owner, he talked about, this amazing weight coming off of his shoulders, because he had this dramatic amount of anxiety trying to make the decisions and be in control, so to speak. Not that he was controlling necessarily, but just felt like he was the controller of this big organization and where it goes, and the decisions to make, and how to pay people, and how much to give to his kids, and all that stuff. And when God really just laid it on his heart and kind of connected those 10 inches in a meaningful way, the distance from your head to your heart, and it sunk into his soul, he said it just was like the weight came off of his shoulders, because he said it was the most freeing thing. When I fully understood what it meant to be a steward, it meant I no longer had to be in control. I didn't have to have all the answers. All I had to do was take instructions and obey. And he said that was way easier than trying to be in control. So anyways, I share that just because it prompted, what your words prompted me to remember that story. So Ron, what would you add to that in terms of something, maybe a mistake you've made in your career that you would encourage others to avoid, or maybe a guiding principle that you've applied that's helped you steer clients or your company through kind of situations like this?
Well, we don't have time for that one. Okay. We know what we'll talk about. So let me give you a positive thing. Is about a month ago, just before all this really began to develop in terms of the quarantine, um, Judy and I were invited to lunch with a missionary that we have supported since before I was a Christian. Her father was a partner of mine in the CPA firm, and so we've supported her for 50 years, 45 years maybe. But we were given an award by the organization for how much money we had given to the staff of this organization. And I was stunned at it, because we've never made a lot of money and we've done a lot of giving, but I was stunned at what we had given over 50 years. And I thought then, as this crisis came, man, oh man, am I glad I gave away that money. What? I didn't have anything to lose, if you will. We had given it away. And God has, of course, provided for us, and we live comfortably. We're not wealthy by any means, but so that was a positive thing. The giving that we had done over a long time frame, I was thinking, wow, what an investment. And that investment didn't go down because of the virus. But now let me just be transparent with you. I am, like everybody else, wanting to try something. I've never done my own trading. And when I saw this market going down, I said, man, oh man, there's got to be buying opportunities. So I called a friend of mine. I said, how do you open an E-Trade account? And so it took me 2 days to figure out how to do an E-Trade. And so during that 2 days, the market recovered significantly. And I found myself thinking about it all the time.
Wow.
And I thought, this is why you don't do you don't do that. You've got your plan, stick with your plan, forget that. But it was an incredible insight at my age. I should have known better. Fortunately, it wasn't a lot of money. And you know what? I don't know how to get back in my E-Trade to see whether I can get it out.
Wow, that's an amazing story and wonderful authenticity. Thank you, Ron. I'm reminded of a client of ours that told me he's a strong believer, and they run a big multi-generational business. But he said, when he made his first kind of few $1,000,000, some friends of his kind of convinced him, you should go out and buy a Porsche. He always thought he's a car guy, loves Porsches, nothing wrong with Porsches. And so he bought the Porsche, and he had it for like a month, and had all these issues, took it into the shop, and rats had gotten into the inside and had eaten all of the wiring. And he said, that was kind of God's moment to me as a reminder of that verse in scripture that's like, you store up treasures on earth, right? The moth will end up destroying it. The thief will come and steal. He's like, for me, it was rats. It came and it destroyed what I was storing up for myself on earth. And now he drives a Tahoe. You'd never know how much money he has. But anyways, just you never know how God's going to work uniquely through each one of us in different ways. So thanks for sharing that story of authenticity, Ron. I think this community has heard, certainly anyone involved with Kingdom Advisors or been to a conference has heard what it means, or to be a Christian financial advisor. But sometimes, for myself, maybe for others on the call, they might find it difficult to put that kind of premise of we should be Christian financial advisors into practical application with clients. So you two have both just done an amazing job of this over your career. So maybe if you could each share a story or two of something practical you put into place of serving your clients as a Christian financial advisor rather than just kind of a financial advisor. Jeff, why don't we start with you on this one?
Yeah, and this is definitely to me this is a great question, Gail, because almost everybody I meet who gets involved in this kind of community, this is really their first question when they're new to it. It was my first question. I said, well, this is great. I've learned all this biblical wisdom. Okay, I built all these financial plans, and I've told clients that maybe not overtly, but implied that if they stack up enough money, they can rely on that and not God. I mean, I didn't say it out loud, but that's sort of what I was thinking. And then I go, wait a minute. I've just done all this Bible study that revealed that God owns it all. And really, if he wants to take it, as we see now, he can do whatever he wants with money or our health or whatever. He can shut the whole world economy down, the entire world. So he's clearly in control. How do I start having that conversation with people? And from the time I kind of got up to speed on the biblical knowledge of it, there was a gap of about 2 years where I literally couldn't, I didn't know how to change the conversation. And it was on my mind every day. I still could not figure out how to change it. And I was praying about it one day, and God revealed to me, he goes, listen, the reason I'm not letting you do it is that you're not behaving as though this wisdom you've delivered to your skull is not actually coming out of you in your fingertips, your life. Okay? So I knew all these things about being generous and so forth, but I knew we could be more generous. And what happened was I felt convicted about our giving, and my wife and I started giving more money away, and suddenly I had the ability to communicate. And some people came into my life, much like the Walk With program, and they suggested that at Morgan Stanley at the time, this was about 2006, 7, somewhere in there, we literally had a button on our computer that said scorecard. And I had some friends challenge me to not look. That was the first thing I looked at every morning, was the scorecard, assets and revenue, and where I ranked in the firm. First thing I looked at. I was an old singles tennis player. I wanted to go in the rankings. That's how I was taught to do it. And so I was addicted to that, the world's scorecard. And once we started giving, God just revealed to me through my friends, you got to stop for 30 days. Stop looking at that and just get out a journal. And what is your eternal scorecard? What's your kingdom scorecard? What is one conversation you had with somebody about where they go to church? What do they think about money? Anything. Just start small to have a conversation. And I would do one, and I would write it in my little journal, and that was my little scorecard. And I did that for a couple of months, and just like anything, built a habit. And I still keep a journal, but it's not every day that way, because I really needed to reinforce these behaviors. And I would pray. I never prayed for 10 years with a client. And then I started praying almost every meeting. And I'd write that in my journal and my scorecard. And it just became a habit. And so I have so much empathy for those out there that are struggling to make that turn. I understand that struggle, and it is hard. And to me, the key is your own walk with the Lord. The better my quiet time, the more time I'm leaning into God, I'm filled up. And then I have to practically have the right scorecard and then execute on the plan God gave me, not my plan, which is what I did for the first half of my career. So, Ron, how about you?
Well, I've said that if you're not spending time with the Lord, you don't have anything to share with your clients. So if I don't start the day on my knees, I don't have anything to share. But to prove also that you never stop learning, the Champions Forum last fall in New York, I think it was in New York. No, it was in Nashville. And we had a young preacher who challenged us to pray with childlike faith. And he made a remark about specificity of prayer. So I started last October in my journal. The first thing that I do is I put down my prayer requests for the day. And And it's unbelievable because now when I've requested it, I see how God answered it. And it's not general prayer, it's specific prayer. I prayed for this meeting this morning, that there would be wisdom and that there would be creativity and unity and purpose, and God would be glorified by what was said. So I would encourage you just to be specific in your prayers. Write them down. What is it that you want? As simple as they can be. And that has been terrifically encouraging to my faith walk. Now, I do get bored with the idea that if you want to read my journals, they haven't changed in 40 years. They're still the same way.
Yeah.
So Judy and I are getting ready to move here in another month. And so now the decision has been made. We're going to throw those journals away. We don't want anybody with journals. They'll say, this is a really poor learner.
That's wonderful.
But I would say time with the Lord is the one thing that I would say is invaluable. Absolutely. And you know something? This type of meeting is the encouragement to do the right thing. Because there's others out there that want to hear that. And I was especially encouraged with the walkthrough program with Sarah and Mary Helen. And I thought, in fact, I read in my quiet time yesterday with Paul Tripp, he said that spiritual blindness is lethal because you don't even know you're blind. And so when you're in community with someone and vulnerable and transparent, that God has an opportunity to speak through someone else. And I heard that in their testimony of sharing their financial information, for example, and learning to be transparent. I thought that was a terrific thing, and I don't know that it's being done in any other city than Houston. So I'm really excited about it. As I listened to Rick talk, I was taking notes because I think it is so significant what's going on in Houston.
Thank you for sharing that, Ron. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head too. Is take away being a financial advisor, right? Just being a believer in trying to live out my personal faith journey is done better with community and accountability, and that's kind of the whole idea of this gathering. I know it's Kingdom Advisors is a big part of that, and then I think the walk with is just that opportunity to be that more one-on-one opportunity. Jeff, I know you and I have talked about this before from your early days at Morgan Stanley. When you right before you first found Kingdom Advisors, and you were going through the hall going, I might be the only one. And I know not everyone works at a big firm that's on this call, but maybe you do, or maybe you feel lonely, even if you have your own company or whatever. Like maybe it's just you're the only one, and that's part of I think the beauty of today or any gathering like this is to go, we're not alone, and we're better when we're together than we are when we're separated. So thank you for sharing that, Ron. All right, next question for both you guys. I think everyone maybe on this call can agree, growing a financial advisory practice, adding clients, et cetera, it's not easy. It doesn't just happen overnight. It doesn't just fall into your lap. But both of you have built incredibly successful businesses. What are a couple of suggestions you might share with the people on this call? Maybe either a pitfall to avoid in trying to grow your practice, or maybe what's worked well for you in your career. Let's start. Ron, why don't we start with you this time?
Well, I think the key for me, it has always been that what God called me to as a mission was more important than the results to me. So I started every business that I've started with almost with a succession plan.
Yeah.
I think that's a 2 Timothy 2:2. It's a walk with type of approach. It is that this business doesn't belong to me, and individually, I can only serve maybe 50 clients, maybe 100 clients. So if I don't train somebody else to train somebody else to train somebody else to train somebody else, I've only accomplished what I could do. I haven't accomplished what can happen through the discipleship of others. Discipleship, I think, has gone out of style. But man, I heard it, and I would sure encourage it. When I became a believer, CBMC and Navigators and Campus Crusade and all these organizations were focused on discipleship. And I got discipled from day one. And I would encourage you to be thinking, am I building into somebody else's life and preparing that? Because it's not about me. It's about the kingdom. So that's the thought that I've got.
Thank you, Ron. Jeff, anything to add there?
Well, I've asked, I was curious to see Ron's response to that. I've asked him that many times. That's probably the second most popular question, by the way. The first question people have that join this community are, now, how do I talk about God at work? Okay, that's number one. That was and the second one is, now, how do I grow a business? How do I survive? Okay. I remember going into my branch manager's office when I got this sort of message from God. He's like, I want you to communicate my wisdom in your business. And I go, that sounds like a terrible business idea to tell everybody their money's not their money. I think, so I literally told my branch manager, hey, I guess my revenue, I'm going to start telling people that. So it's probably going to cut in half. They're probably not going to like that message. But the opposite happened. And I couldn't agree more with what Ron said. The only success I've really had, and has really come from God setting the vision. So I think Ron's just having a vision for what you want the thing to look like, and being on your knees. Being on my knees in the morning is when I get the best ideas from him. I really don't have any of many great ideas. One little tip, and Ron's humble about it, but I asked him about how did he do such a good job of raising up other leaders. And I said, you're such a good delegator. And Ron, remember this, you've said it, I'm sure, a lot. He goes, well, no, I'm not a good delegator. I'm an abdicator, And, but what I love about Ron, and one of the things I've learned from Ron, is really trying to empower people. And so life is a team sport. I grew up like Ron's son as a singles tennis player. And sometimes that's not a great quality in life later. It might be good for playing tennis, but it's not great for marriage. It's a team sport, and business is a team sport. And so I think once you have that God-given vision, you get on whatever scorecard he's got you on, then empowering others. It's not about me going to the top of the bracket, but it's how can we achieve this God-sized goal together, and empowering people, not controlling them. So just for me, it's been life is a team sport is a principle we have at our business. And we try to just put everybody in the category where their God-given talents can be maximized, and then cut them loose and let God's creativity speak to them and flow through them. And that's been so much more fun than trying to do it all myself.
Thanks.
You've heard me say it too, Jeff, and that is that in order to grow a business, you've got to be willing to lose clients.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is that you've got to train people up and turn them loose sooner than what you might think is right, because they won't do it as good as you do it. And that's true. But you've got your staff to learn from their experiences, and they're not going to do everything right.
Hey, Ron, you know what I found out? They're actually better than me.
I found that one
lose early. So.
Yeah. Well, you've heard me say it too. Every business I started did better after I left.
Right. I'm just trying to get out of the way.
Yeah.
All right. I've got one more question for both of you, and then I have an individual question for each of you, and then we'll do some group Q&A. And so just a little note on that, by the way. There is for everyone on the call, there's a chat function. If you look on the bottom of your screen in your Zoom toolbar, it might be on the top of your screen, depending on how you set it up. there's a little chat box. And if you type in a question there, it'll pop up on my screen, and I can ask it to them when we get to the kind of group Q&A session. So that's how we'll do Q&A here in just a little bit. But last question for both of you, and then I have an individual question for each of you, is this. You both have talked a lot about generosity in both how it's impacted your personal lives, talking about it with clients, et cetera. And I think maybe a good question for everyone on the call is, in a crisis like this, I think for a lot of advisors out there, it's at least instinctually maybe the last thing you want to talk about right now. So I guess my question is this: how do you, or should you, or what would that look like? Talk about giving with clients during a time like this, and maybe any specific suggestions or advice to the community on this call of what their clients might be able to take advantage of right now.
Well,
Ron, I'll let you field that one first.
I think that this is a time when we as Christians have the opportunity to be generous, and that's distinctive, that's unique. And so looking for opportunities to be generous. I tell you what, one of the things that's been most meaningful to Judy and I is carry cash and give it away. The FedEx person driving down the street, or the postmaster, or somebody that you see at the gas station. People can use some money, and you hand somebody $20, $40, $100, whatever it may be, has an incredible impact on them. And there's a lot of people that just need the cash. So I think generosity in many ways, but be willing to give some cash. There's nothing more rewarding than to hand somebody some cash and see what happens to their countenance.
Yeah.
I like to look for the people, like we have landscapers in the neighborhood. You go up to the person who's doing the blowing and hand him some money. Nobody does that.
Yeah.
And so you don't do it for your own credit. You do it because God. And when they say thank you, I say, look, I've been blessed, and I want to be a blessing to you. So anyway, I think this is a great opportunity to be generous.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Jeff, what about you?
Well, I just, Malachi 3:10, right? Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be enough room to store it. I mean, there are not too many places where God asks us to test him. He's in charge. And I just finished reading a book by Steve Robinson, Cale, about Chick-fil-A, his experience as the chief marketing officer for 34 years there. And he talks a lot in the book about, we really weren't that brilliant. It's a chicken sandwich. But he goes, he's convinced that one of the keys was that Truett Cathy, the founder of Chick-fil-A, always tithed 10% of the profits of the business. And I don't think he was doing it necessarily as a, hey, now you owe me, God. But I think God, he doesn't think about the economy the same way I do, or most of us do. He controls everything. And I think it's just an opportunity. I think of Bill Bright's line again, Ron, what an opportunity to trust God. When your income is down, right? I always say we work harder in this business in bear markets, and we'll make less money. So it's not natural to want to be generous when you're making less money. But God's economy is just different. And I think he just loves it when we're on his agenda and are generous all the time, in good times and bad times. And so, we gave 10% of our company away to NCF last year so that we could institutionalize it. Yeah. And it's just, we're just excited to see, hey, what might God do? And maybe he doesn't make it huge, but he's made it a lot of fun at a minimum. So I think I couldn't agree more. Just continuing generosity, even when it doesn't feel like the right financial decision on your balance sheet. I just don't know of any stories where that led to a problem.
Yeah, that's a good word. That's a really good word. And to to kind of wrap us up, Ron, I'll start with you. You've always been just an incredible visionary, to say the least. And I know from the recent Kingdom Advisors Conference that you're focusing more and expanding the Ron Blue Institute. So maybe for everyone on the call, you can just tell us a little bit about what that is, and maybe how we might be an encouragement or a support to you as you are growing that Ron Blue Institute and rolling that out.
Well, I happen to believe that Houston, in many ways, is a leader in the whole Kingdom Advisor world. And I think there's an opportunity in Houston to do some things because you've got good leadership and you've got a lot of support to begin with. I loved what Rick had to say, and I want to emphasize a couple of points of what he had to say early. One, it just dawned on me within the last number of months that financial advisors are leaders in the community. Rick called them fathers, but you think about it, every organization wants a financial advisor or somebody with financial expertise on their boards. So you're on school boards, you're on university boards, you're on ministry boards, you're on church boards. In other words, you have already a sphere of influence, and it's bigger than your clients and your staff. You've got an opportunity to use the influence that God has given you beyond your profession. And my hope and dream is that the advisor world adopts the city and says, we want to change the city. It's not just the advisors we want to change, because if people get their pocketbook right, the world notices. And I think in high schools and churches and in ministries, you've got an opportunity to introduce biblical financial wisdom that works. And we know it works. And we also know that it's pretty simple. That little 4-H tool that we've got, to me, it's almost like the 4 spiritual laws. I can explain it in 2 minutes, but it changes the rest of my life when I really adopt it. So I want to encourage you with what you're doing and challenge you to adopt a vision and mission for the whole city. And working through your spheres of influence, I think you can have dramatic impact because you're already leaders and you're already respected for many, many good reasons. But you need a big vision and you need commitment by leadership. And so I think you've got that vision, and I think you've got the leadership and the resources to pull it off. And I'm looking forward to helping I don't have a stock answer or a program, but I certainly have some thoughts, and I want to encourage and help in any way that I can to do that. What would it look like if we graduated 100,000 students out of the high schools who understood God's ownership of money?
Wow.
What would happen to marriages? What would happen? What would happen if Houston Baptist alone began sending 30, 40, 50 financial advisors trained already into the financial community? You guys can make that happen. You've got the influence to make that happen. So I'm excited about what you're doing. Love working with all of you. Some of my favorite people in the world are on the call. Believe me.
Thank you, Ron, and we're excited to see that. What's the website link if anyone's interested? Is it ronblueinstitute.com?
Yeah, you won't find anything on the city strategy there yet, but ronblueinstitute.com has a lot of resources.
Perfect.
That are available.
Well, I'm excited about that. Always
roll that out.
Yeah, I know the first time I heard about it, it just clicked in my brain. I was like, man, that is the future. That is the dream. So you're always 10 steps ahead. So thank you, Ron, for leading there. Jeff, we'll wrap up with you, and then looks like I got a couple questions coming in from the rest of the people on the call. But here's the last question for you, Jeff. You just wrote a book, kind of detailing your what you call your halftime moment as a financial advisor, and how God kind of transformed your view of what it means to be a wealth manager. Can you maybe share a principle or two, and maybe where we can find a copy of it to support you?
Yeah, I'll just say this. Thanks, Cale. The book is really, for those who've heard of Bob Buford's halftime, it was sort of my halftime for our industry, for financial advisors, the people that are on this call. I see Brad Hulse might be on the call. Brad is just a great friend, and I had started this thing called the Christian Focus Group at Morgan Stanley, and we got it up to about 600 members with Brad's help and another leadership group. And I was getting a phone call or email almost every day years ago, about 6 years ago, about exactly the questions we're talking about today. How do I bring up faith in our workplace, in the wealth advisory space? And then how do I grow the business? And I would literally spend an hour and a half to 2 hours a day, almost every day, on the phone with advisors talking about this. And the team would kind of come in and look at their watch and go, we do have other things to do today, Jeff. And so I was praying about what to do. And it's my favorite thing to talk about, this topic we're talking about today. And I felt like God say, hey, I've done so many things for you. Write them all down, send them the book, the advisors the book. And if they still want to talk, they'll call you. Yeah. And so that's when I started writing the book. Most of it about 4 years ago. It's really just about this turn that I've already talked about today, where I was doing it the way the world says to do it, and then God gave me a different scorecard, and it was so much more fun. And I would just encourage, if you are feeling a little lonely and there's no sports on TV, if it's 120 pages, I used to say it's a one flight book, but now nobody's flying, so it's a one evening book. But tradingupbook.com, or it's on Amazon, the Kindle version, or the audible version is on there. But it's just about that transition. So if you're new in the industry and want to learn some things about some pitfalls that are out there, maybe ways to go, or if you're trying to make that turn, or maybe if you're even been in the industry a long time, you'll know you're not alone by reading that. So I just hope it's an encouragement for all of us to find the alignment. I didn't have that alignment, really. It was hard for me once I got called by God to do it his way. My life and career really weren't aligned, and it was my effort to try to get that alignment. And my prayer for everybody on this call, and anybody who reads the book, is just to lean into that feeling and to align your circumstances. If God's telling you to do something in the business, align your platform and your circumstances to do that. It's so much fun when you get there. So I just want to encourage people with that.
Thanks, Jeff. We'll make that both Ron Blue Institute and the book. When we conclude, we'll send out a thing if anyone needs a link. But have a couple of questions that come in, and we'll take about 5 minutes, and then we'll wrap up. Actually, quite a few questions that come in, so I'm just gonna pick one. So here's a question, which is, what's one piece of advice you would have given to yourself early in your career that would have saved you a lot of heartache? Who wants to take that one first?
I can look back and I can answer that question. When I started my career, I was not saved, and the boss, I worked on Wall Street, and the boss that I worked for, he said, the way to get ahead in this business is to beat the boss into work and leave after he leaves. Well, unfortunately, he had no children, and he lived on Manhattan, and I lived in Staten Island. So it was hard for me to do that.
Yeah.
And I worked the first 10 years traveling a lot. It was not uncommon to leave Sunday night and come home Friday night. And when I started Ronald Blue and Company, I made a commitment that I would never bring work home, and I would never work on the weekend. And my travel would always be with the agreement of my family. And secondly, we had a rule. we had dinner at 6 o'clock. And if I was traveling, and if I wasn't at the table, if I was at the table at 6:01, it was considered a night gone. And I had a limit on the number of nights that I could be gone during a week, no more than 2 nights when I did have to travel. So I would work less and trust God more. I found out that starting a business and seeing it grow like it did, it grew faster than anything I've ever done, and I worked far less. I didn't violate it. I did not bring work home, and I did not work on the weekends. And the business seemed to do just fine without my involvement.
Well, I'm sure your family was very appreciative of that. It's a good word. Jeff, what would you add to that?
From a spiritual standpoint, we've kind of covered that, right? Get on God's agenda, not your own first. That was mistake number one I made. So doing that is God will tell you what to do. He's got all the answers. But from a tactical standpoint, the thing that comes to mind for me is that I was actually at Payne Weber, which is of course now UBS, when I started the business in 1995, and the shot clock was fast as an advisor. Some of the people on this call may be experiencing that now, or certainly remember it, that you had to bring in a certain number of assets as your salary was quickly going down. You had to bring in a certain number of assets to keep your job. And I was an old CPA, and my motivation was to not go back to auditing. So I took everything that came in the door. If they want to do an options trade, I'd do an options trade. If they wanted to buy an IPO, I'd buy the IPO. Whatever they needed to do, I would execute. And so what you end up with is this scattered group of clients that is not homogeneous. And really, it's hard to scale something that's ad hoc. And so I think as painful as it is to say no to things that don't really fit your core, to think a lot about what niche you love to serve and that you're gifted at serving, sticking with the niche, sticking with your minimum in your process for that niche. While it might go slower at first, it will snowball. I think the business that I built personally would have been a lot bigger if I would have had that focus.
That's a good word. Thank you for sharing that. And we'll do one more question, and then we'll wrap up for the sake of time. And Ron, I know you've got a 12:30, so we'll let you answer this one first. So next question that came in is, how would you counsel clients that are dealing with fear and anxiety related to COVID-19 and market volatility right now? Any advice specific to what you would tell a client that's kind of going through that crisis mode at the moment?
I wouldn't tell a client something. I would ask a client something. I would say, tell me what is, why you are afraid, what is really bothering you, because I want to know what your heart is on this, and I want to be able to pray for you.
Yeah.
So what's happening? What's the fear? What's driving you? So I would ask them, I wouldn't try to give them an answer. They've got to answer the question themselves. But if you listen to them, I think they're going to have a tremendous amount of respect for you because you care. That's what you want to give to your client. I care for you, and fear is real. And I want to make sure that we honor your feelings. So I would not try to change them.
Wow.
I would just ask them questions.
I just want to highlight that phrase, at least it stuck with me, which is, I wouldn't tell a client, I would ask a client. I think that's wisdom just in general. And being a financial advisor, we tend to be in that seat of telling people when maybe we should be asking more questions. So particularly as it relates to their fear and anxiety, that creates an opportunity for us to figure out what's the root problem. Usually stress about money is connected to something else that's going on in their life. So thanks for sharing that. Jeff, anything else to add? Go ahead.
I'm going to jump off also because I do have this call in just a few minutes. So
no problem. Thank you, Ron, for being here so much.
Thank you for inviting me. I sure enjoyed it. Love you all. Bye-bye.
All right, Jeff, close us out here.
Just to add on to what he said, I think that's a brilliant answer. And I think the biggest thing you can bring, it just always comes back. One of the biggest mistakes I made was, even when I got the head knowledge, I didn't transform myself quickly enough. And I think what Ron said about you can only bring what, he has nothing to say unless he's had quiet time in the morning. It's exactly how I feel. I think the best thing we can bring are our prayed up selves,
Yeah.
our abiding selves, right? Connect with the vine. And I think people are going to probably hear our tone and whether read our nonverbal cues more than our actual words. And if we're peaceful, it's easier for us to impart peace to others. And of course, there's all kinds of charts and graphs about, we've been through millions of these things, and of course we'll get through it and hear all the statistics. But I think more important than the statistics is what we bring to the table with our own God-given peace.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Jeff. And I'm just reminded to bring us kind of to a close, and we'll do a charge here in just a minute in some prayer. But I'm just reminded of James 1. I think it's verses 2 through 4. That says, "Consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." And it just kind of hit me the other day, the latter part of that verse. Of course, consider it pure joy. That all sounds lovey-dovey, and yes, we should do that, but that's pretty hard a lot of times to actually put into practice. But the latter part of that verse, so that you may be mature and complete. And I think that's the kicker there. God wants us to be mature and complete as people, as spouses, as husbands, fathers, wives, mothers, as financial advisors. That's what he wants for us. And so as we go through this crisis of COVID-19, this pandemic, there's going to be others in our lifetime. But it's an incredible opportunity for us to be refined, to be different in the eyes of the world, where we have joy that might not make sense. What an opportunity to speak truth into people's lives. So I can't thank Jeff and Ron enough for just sharing their wisdom and being a part of this. And thank you to everyone for joining.